You ever have one of those moments in life where you realize, way too late, that you were standing closer to danger than you ever thought possible? The kind of moment where, looking back, you get this cold chill running down your spine because you can't believe you didn't see it in the moment. This is one of those nights for me, and I'll never forget it. I was working a late shift as a paramedic, and around 10 at night, my partner and I got dispatched to what sounded like a pretty routine call. The dispatcher said it was a simple assault in one of the rougher neighborhoods. We covered. Now when you hear simple assault, you don't expect anything too dramatic. Usually it's a fist fight. Someone got roughed up. Maybe a bloody nose or a cut lip. Nothing too unusual for us. So we roll up to this street and right away the scene feels off. The street is lined with parallel parked cars, kind of squeezed in tight along the curb. There's dim yellow streetlight, flickering just enough to make the shadows look strange. And then I spot him, this man standing on the curb behind the row of cars, yelling in this really weird, high-pitched, almost warbly voice. He's not making much sense, but he's clearly upset. The cops are already there trying to calm him down, and from a distance it looks like he's the one we're here for. He's got this frantic energy, like he's in shock, and I figure maybe he's the victim. Maybe he's the one who got assaulted. So we grab our gurney and start heading his way, weaving between the parked cars to get to him. And that's when things take a turn. As soon as I maneuver around one of the parked cars, I see it. At first my brain doesn't process what I'm looking at. Leaned up against a small silver Mini Cooper, slouched halfway into the gutter, is a man, and for maybe 2 seconds, 2 long, unforgettable seconds, I swear I thought he was alive. His eyes were open, staring right at me. It was this eerie, unsettling moment where I felt like he was looking directly through me, past me, and into something else entirely. And then my stomach dropped. I realized he wasn't alive at all. He was dead. The guy was shirtless and his chest and stomach were just shredded. I've seen stabbings before. Normally they're clean puncture wounds. You can patch them, you can work with them. But this was brutal. His torso looked like someone had taken all their rage out on him with a blade, tearing into him over and over again. It wasn't just violence. It was personal. The sight froze me for just a moment, and then the training kicked in. We pulled the gurney around, got the equipment ready, and started working. Even though, deep down, I knew there was almost no chance of saving him. You don't stop. You don't ever stop until someone higher up tells you it's over. So we started CPR. We scooped him up, loaded him fast, and rushed him toward the ambulance. His so-called roommate, the guy who'd been crying and yelling, kept asking if his friend was going to be okay. His voice was still high and strange, almost like a performance, like he was trying too hard. At the time, I chalked it up to shock. We got to the hospital, did everything we could, but it was already decided before we even arrived. The doctor called it, pronounced him dead, and there was this heavy silence in the room, the kind that always follows after a failed resuscitation. For paramedics, it's something you never quite get used to, no matter how many times it happens. But the night wasn't over. Not even close. As we were finishing up paperwork, a couple of cops from the scene came over to tie up loose ends and get details from us. One of them, almost casually, dropped a bombshell that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. He said, "You know, the story we first got was that the victim went outside for a smoke, and when his roommate came out a little later, he found him stabbed out there on the curb. That's what we all believed when we showed up. The guy standing on the curb had found his friend and was just distraught." But then the cop continued. "After you guys left, one of the officers noticed a blood trail leading from inside the house, out the door and down to the curb where you found him. I remember staring at the officer, trying to wrap my head around that. Wait, inside the house? Yeah. Turns out the victim hadn't been attacked on the street at all. He'd been stabbed inside the house badly, savagely, and then somehow dragged, or maybe he stumbled out to the curb, collapsing against that Mini Cooper where we found him, and that's when things got even darker. The cops confronted the roommate, the same guy who had been standing right behind us the whole time we were working. The same guy crying out in that weird, high-pitched voice asking if his friend was going to be okay. When they pressed him about the blood trail, he panicked. He bolted back inside the house, slammed the door, and barricaded himself inside. By the time the officer told me this, there was a full-on SWAT team surrounding that house. Guns out, lights flashing. The entire block was locked down. I remember sitting there in stunned silence, thinking about how, for most of that call, I had been working on a man who had been stabbed to death, while the person who likely murdered him was standing literally a couple of feet behind me, close enough that I could have brushed against him as I moved, and that realization chilled me to the bone. In our line of work, we're used to chaos. We're used to not knowing the full story when we arrive. But it's one thing to deal with accidents, overdoses, fights. It's another thing entirely to realize you were shoulder to shoulder with someone who had just committed a brutal murder. The more I thought about it later, the more all those little details clicked into place. His weird warbly voice like he was putting on a show. The way he was yelling but not actually approaching to help his friend. The way he was positioned, standing there, almost too close, like he was making sure we were buying his story. At the time, it had all seemed like shock, grief, maybe drugs, but in hindsight it felt rehearsed. I couldn't stop replaying that moment in my head. The moment I came around the car and saw the victim for the first time. His eyes locked open, glassy, staring at nothing. And behind me, that high-pitched voice calling out, pretending to care, pretending to be the innocent roommate. It was almost cinematic in a horrifying way. Like if you slowed down the footage, you'd see how close the killer and I really were. Afterward, I remember sitting in the ambulance long after the call was done, just staring at my hands. Normally, after a tough case, you process, you write, you report, you grab a coffee and try to move on. But this one lingered. It felt different, because it wasn't just the violence of the stabbing. It was that realization that for nearly the entire time, I'd been completely unaware of the danger right beside me. And that's something people don't always understand about working in EMS. We walk into unknowns every single shift. Every call could be exactly what it sounds like, or it could be something far darker, far more dangerous. We don't get the luxury of knowing. We just go. We just act. And sometimes only later do we realize how close we came to something we'd never want to imagine. I don't know what happened to that man after SWAT surrounded the house. We weren't there for the ending. That wasn't our job. But what I do know is that I'll never forget his voice. The way it cut through the night air. Strange and almost fake. I'll never forget the victim's lifeless stare as I tried desperately to bring him back, knowing in my gut it was already too late. And I'll never forget the shiver that crawled up my spine when I realized the killer was right there behind me, watching the entire time. That night taught me something I'll carry forever. Sometimes the scariest people aren't the ones you see coming. They're the ones standing quietly right beside you, pretending to be something they're not. If you want to hear more real stories like this, true, raw, and sometimes chilling, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and follow the channel. This is True Threads, and I'll be back soon with another story you won't forget.